No, so we have talked about professional athletes. We talked about criticism on social media. We talked about athleticism and how cricket's evolved, particularly over the last 20 years. Like cricketers are athletes, and they're probably some of our best paid cricketers, best paid athletes, I should say, in the country. You start to work with Australian cricket after the Bulls. You go into
Yeah, I was at the Bulls and Darren Lehman. I went on tour in 2012 with Mickey Arthur, and the team went to England for 4 or 5 weeks for a one-day series. And things were a bit testy then with Mickey and the leading organisation. And they asked me for my feedback, and I gave them honest feedback. They wanted it, they didn't like it. And within 3 or 4 months, it all imploded. And that's when they appointed Buff. And Buff said, I don't want you to come with me to the Aussies.
Did you meet him before that?
Yeah, he was the coach of the Bulls.
The board made 3 significant decisions yesterday, and I'm here today with Pat to talk to you about those, give you a little bit of background. The 3 decisions were to terminate Mickey Arthur's contract as coach of the Australian men's team. Secondly, to replace him with Darren Lehman as the new coach of the team. And thirdly, following a request from Michael Clark to allow Michael to stand down as a selector.
Perfect.
Yeah, so I worked with Buff, and we got on famously. Yeah, we got on famously, and we still do to this day. But my father had melanoma at that stage. He was dying, and he died on August 24, 2013. I wasn't with the team, but the team were playing the last Test match of the Oval when he died, and there's already moves underway to get me involved. And Michael Clark told the boys, look, I was only on tour with him for a short time, didn't know him that well. And the boys wore black armbands for Dad at the Oval in the last Test match. And then Buff said, and it would have been 2 or 3 days after Dad died, Buff said, come on, hurry up. I'm going, Buff, come here in a couple of weeks, will you? Because it's a big commitment. You're away 300 days a year. And people don't understand that. 300 days a year. And it's not until you leave that lifestyle that when you sit at home watching the cricket, you're going, oh, geez, the boys are in England, or the boys are in India, the boys are in Zimbabwe. You're going, I did that, and it's... So, yeah, then I signed, end of 2013.
Kids are sort of high school, right?
Yeah. God, they loved the first bit of it because they could go to, we spent Christmas, obviously, the Crown, and then they're sitting in boxes at every game. They have 2 weeks in Dubai. They had 2 weeks in Lords and England and touring everywhere. And it took, when I did leave the cricket, it's funny, you'd get these tickets and I'd say, look, we're going to footy. And I remember my eldest always saying, do we in a box, Dad? I said, no, we're not. I'm not going. I said, you've got to get used to this now. We're not in the limelight. We're sitting with the ordinary people now. We're not in the boxes. So, look, they enjoyed that. But I think it was at the end of the 3rd year, my daughter said to Dad, look, this is good, Melbourne and all this sort of thing, but Christmas is at the beach. And, yeah. But probably the turning point for me was I'd been away for 6, 7 months, and I came up the stairs after a long flight, and I had all my bags, and I was tired, and I opened the front door, and my wife and 2 daughters all dressed up, and I thought, we must be going for family dinner. And my wife turned to me and said, we're going to the Mercedes-Benz fashion show. Our life goes on too, Damian. They all walked out the door, and I'm sitting home with the dog that night. That's when I went, yeah, this isn't good.
Medno, you must have met some seriously high-profile people. Tell me someone famous you met through cricket.
Yeah, I met King Charles, shook his hand. He had a bit of humour about him. I was quite surprised. He was very good. Met a number of prime ministers because with the Sydney Test, we'd always go to Kirribilli House. I've been there several times, and when I think it was Tony Abbott was I nearly said headmaster. He was a prime minister, and then Malcolm Turnbull. Met Bob Hawke. Buff and I had a really good session with Bob Hawke, and then the next day he left his book in the hotel signed and said, thanks, Dame, for keeping the Australian cricket team safe. That book, Memoirs, and he signed it. And met John Howard, as you know, as a mad cricket fan. In the 2015 Ashes, I was going down for breakfast at the Royal Gardens right next to Kensington where we stayed. And you couldn't get a seat because every hanger-on of Cricket Australia was there because it's a Lord Test match. Anyway, John's going a bit deaf, or Mr. Howard, should I say, was going a bit deaf, and he stands up and he goes, Damian, there's a seat over here. So I went down and had breakfast with him, just the two of us, for about 45 minutes. And as I was leaving, the concierge came over to me, a very fine English gentleman. He said, "Excuse me, sir." He said, "What's it like being private security for a former Prime Minister?" I thought, I got this bloke.
How good.
And all I said was, "Yeah, look, it's okay, but it gets very messy after midnight." He didn't know what
Just surprised they didn't make the front of the London Times the next
cricket
day.
magic, John Howard.
Oh no, proper cricket, tragic. So good for Australian sport, Wallabies
Absolutely.
cricket.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And he was genuine, loved for it. He really did.
can't bowl to save his life.
And I reckon that haunts him to this day.
Of course it does.
So you talked about mistakes. You talked about athletes, competitors. There's no one better than Shane Warne. For all those, so tell us a bit about Shane Warne. PG rated.
Yeah.
Warne, the athlete.
Probably a few. I've got to be careful who I'm speaking to here. But, look, just, we call him the king, and he is the king. The best cricket brain, a very genuine person, very generous person. And I think a lot of people externally would look at him going, "Oh, he's just, he's with girls and all da-da-da." But he was, should I say, just a genuine human being and an exceptional cricketer. And I can remember I said to him one night, we're having a drink, we're in South Africa, and I said, "Warnie, I want to face you on the net for 6 balls." And he goes, "No, what we'll do is," I said, "we'll go down we're in South Africa, Cape Town." He said, "I'll bowl 6 at you. You can be keeper." And I said, "All right." Mark Nicholas was there. He was watching, the former commentator. And Warnie had this big thumb and strong thumb. And all I can remember is hearing the thumb click and then zzz, and it was coming at a fair rate. And I didn't have a clue what was going on. And Mark Nicholas was just falling over backwards, just going, "Look at this." And I said, "Man, I can see," like, you watch it on TV, you think he's just looping it in. But yeah, no, I can't go tell all the stories and that sort of thing. But as far as, I'll never hear a bad word against Warnie. Yeah, look, he made a few mistakes, but end of the day, he loved the game of cricket. He loved his teammates. He loved Australia. He loved his kids. And to me, he's the king, mate. He's the best ever cricketer in my eyes.
He didn't choose for the celebrity lifestyle. He was a good cricketer.
Yeah.
It just happens that, particularly in the UK, a lot of the famous people love cricket.
Yeah.
And he literally, Elton John, he's around people's
Well, Chris Martin now from Coldplay.
Best mates.
Yeah. No, he's and because he had the look too, and he had the blonde hair, and he had a bit of pizzazz, and people, like, we've lost the characters in modern sport. You know what I mean? And they're all, they interview after game, "Oh, the forwards went forward and the backs did this, and it's one game at a time." And whereas Warnie just come out with it. Even he did the same when he was commentating. And I can remember sitting beside he and Craig McDermott from lunch till tea, and I didn't say a word, having a cup of coffee, and he was just commentating just to us. "Oh, this is the field changes we should make. This is the adjustments." And it happened, like whether it be that over or 2 overs down. His cricket brain was exceptional. It really was. He was very, very good like that. But yeah, no, but insecure in many ways, mate. Very insecure. Yep.
Just a person with the skills.
I
smile when you're keeping to his bowling, because you can imagine Mike adding that for that ball of the century.
Oh.
He would have heard the click, heard the fizz, but everyone's watching. Big screens have just been introduced, so the replays on it made him look like a fool.
Yeah.
Who could face him? And I guess he revolutionised cricket in a way. But
he made people watch spinners too. You know what I mean? Like, you love watching the quicks, and then you go, "Oh, spinners are, I'll go and have a cup of tea." But there's always something going to happen when Warnie was on. And he led the lifestyle, I said, but very generous, very genuine, and very giving person.
Yeah. So that's the person. You mentioned competitiveness before. Was he just a dogged competitor?
Oh, had to win everything. Have to win from table tennis to anything. Like, just, he just would compete. And all the good sportsmen in the world, they all compete, and they all compete hard. But he did it in that larrikin way, that real Aussie way. And okay, yes, he might have had a couple of darts and then a couple of beers and all that sort of thing. And he enjoyed a win. Like, when you won something, like, he was leading the charge, and a good man to have around the dressing room. They're the sort of blokes you want around your dressing room. When things are tough, he was the one that, "Give me the ball. I'm going to do something here," and invariably he did.
Times it wasn't until the end of his career when he was mic'd up and he was telling the listeners
Yep.
what he was setting up.
Yep.
When you really realised every ball was deliberate, every single thing he did on a cricket field, every field placement.
Yeah.
And he was the captain. He didn't have the captains.
His diet was pretty ordinary, mate. His diet, I remember, I think it was Africa, and we had a couple of drinks and went back to his room, and Michael Clark was with us, and they ordered ham and cheese toasties. It wasn't like 5. I reckon it had to be 60. 60 ham and cheese toasties. Yeah, no, it was, but he loved vodka Red Bulls.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and yeah, he was a character, great cricketer, great person.
One of our two champions, and my favourite two commentators of all time over summer, Shane Warne and Ian Healy.
Yeah.
Heels well.
Yeah.
And I guess Heels learned so much about Warney and tactics and things, but as a keeper, he saw the game differently than everyone else. He's a great commentator. How'd you come mates with Heels? He wasn't playing?
No, he wasn't. He was at Queensland Cricket, and I think he was on the board. And then, you just strike up a good relationship with someone. And then, obviously, he was commentating for Nine. We actually got into trouble. We were at the Wacker, and we both went to the same barber, Sammy, there at Cooperoo. And those earpieces you have to the commentary team, and everyone just listens to the same commentary, and we were like 3 for 500. We were fine, and the day was boring. And I'm just listening. Heels goes, oh, there's Serge. He called him Serge, He goes, oh, there's Sergey boy. Sergey boy, give us a wave. And I sort of went like this and said, boy, you need a haircut, boy. You need to go and see Sammy there, And I went, yeah, da-da-da. Cricket Australia blew up and said I shouldn't be conversing with the commentary team while the game's on. And I said, oh, God. I said, we were 3 for 500. I wasn't giving away tips or anything like that, But, Heels, and then he's bought a unit down here he's bought 2 now, I think. He's a multi-billionaire, Heels. Yeah, oh, mate, he's unbelievable, Heels. And so he's got a unit down here, and he comes down like every second week when the cricket season's not on, and we catch up and have a couple of beers and chat. And then only 2 weeks ago was Heels and Jimmy Marr came down, and we had a good session. So yeah,
He impressed you on the field, off the field. I guess you can throw Warney and Heels into this conversation, but 1 or 2 cricketers just big impact on you as a person, as a cricketer. Who really stood out? You've had a lot to do with cricket in the Queensland setup, the Australian setup, and talk about a dynasty, wholly.
Oh, look, Buff sort of had a lot because Buff had real life experiences. He lost his parents. I think dad had a heart attack, mum to cancer, or vice versa. He went through a marriage breakdown. He had a wonderful attitude to coaching. He knew the game inside and out. And I can remember we lost the Ashes in England 3-2, and my brother and I went out and had Chinese with Buff. 3 of us just sitting there at Knots or something. And my brother was shattered. Oh, Buff, we just lost the Ashes. And Buff said, mate, the sun comes up tomorrow. And I always had this saying too, look, we're not doing research for cancer, and 1 billion people in China don't give a rat's. All right? And yes, it hurts. Probably the most hurtful day was when we were bowled out for 60 at Knots, peak viewing time, 8 o'clock on a Thursday night. And I'll never, ever forget it. And Buff just goes, mate, this is peak viewing time. I said, yeah, I know. He goes, yeah, the sun comes up. I said, oh, God, I hope it does, But yeah, Buff was quite influential, just a very calming influence, and he could get his message across. I can remember he used to hate players when they get out and they come into the dressing room, they'd throw their bats and they'd carry on, big tantrum. Buff hated it. Ryan Harris got out the MCG once and bashed the hell out of his bat. It was in pieces. And I could see Buff was fuming. So at the debrief, the end of the day, we're in the dressing rooms here at the MCG, and Harry was absolutely, his adrenaline was brown. And we all walked into the room, and Buff said, just go and get Harry's bat. So I went and got his bat, and he said, just put it up here. And where the whiteboard was, he just put his bat in front of the team. And Harry's got his hands in his head, and here we go. Buff spoke for half an hour, didn't mention the bat. But Harry was in a mess for 30 minutes. Just a subtle way of getting his message across. And his theory with the game plan was, well, Buff, what's your game plan? See ball, hit ball. It's not hard. And I've always maintained this in rugby, in league, and soccer, everything. The bigger the game, the simpler the plan. Don't confuse players because they want to play.
That's Craig Bellamy, Wayne Bennett 101.
Yeah, it is.
Simple game. Speaking of games, you've been an athlete. You've been around league. You've worked in union, worked in cricket. Who produces the best athletes. And when I say athletes, that's your definition. All rounder, mentally tough, physically tough competitors, or can you split them?
Oh, look, I still think rugby league players. I really do. I mean, one, the time the ball's in play, the speed of the game now is exceptional. The repeat sets. But talking to coaches in league and blokes who will come across from other sports, and they said the work capacity of leagueies is 10 times the amount of other sports. And I think it's because of their background, that they've grown up and some don't come from, the GPS system. Some do, the JoJos and that sort of thing, but they know they have to work for it and it's their way out. But yeah, look, I think as far as athletes go, I mean, everyone can say about the AFL. I don't follow the AFL that quickly because I follow contact sports, but I have to throw that in there. But look, the leagueies they're fit, they're strong, they're mad, they're crazy. And I think you've only got to go to a game live and listen to the hits and you just go, this ain't good for you.
Yeah, it's massive. And I guess if you were then, what would be your philosophy if you, let's just play hypotheticals, a 32-year-old Medno in his peak gets offered the para strength and conditioning role? What would you be going in there doing? With all that you know now, putting it in a 25-year-old person, how would you take? Would you be individual training programs for every athlete? Would you be keeping it very simple? Would you be using all of the different skills? Is it more running? Is it less running? Is it more power, less power?
More speed based now. I really believe that. I mean, with the interchange, with the up and back, and work ethic. I don't care who you are, whether it be a golfer, tennis player, cricketer, your work ethic, you know what I mean? And I've seen the very best, like Steve Smith. Yeah, Smudge is just a worker. He won't hit 50 balls, he'll hit 5,000 balls and he wants to perfect his craft. Goal kickers the same. Ron O'Gara's, and I used to sit behind the post and catch a ball and kick it, but he'd kick for an hour. The blokes that I've seen successful, they bowl, they bat, they hit, they kick. So I like people who are professionals, and I can see it even here. You can pick kids when they come in, like the Jojo Fafita's, the Jai Greys, Massimo, Zane. You knew that they were going to move on because of their attitude to training. They didn't ask a lot of questions. They got in and worked. If they're a little bit sore, they didn't say. You know what I mean? They had that resilience there already. But no, if I went back now, yeah, speed-based is a big one. And work ethic, like no shortcuts. I'm just not... I don't like players that take shortcuts. The classic, if you've got 8 reps and the bloke keeps quiet for the first 6, but then reps 7, 8, he's yelling out to players, come on, come with me. You're going, mate, where were you for the first 6? All right, so, and I point that out. I don't mind, hey, mate, you didn't do anything the first 6, so shut your beak.
This is the whole, careful how I word it, this is the nature-nurture debate. Is that innate? Is that naturally in someone? Can that be coached and taught, Medno, in your experience, or is it just something the Jai Greys and Zanes are born with?
I think they're born with it to a degree. Oh, well, 80% of it. But I look at someone like Massimo Deludis, and I can remember here, and beautiful kid, good worker, strong, big. And I remember asking the coaches, I said, has he got some mongrel in him? And so we worry about that. I said, I'll do something with him. So we went out on the blue mat outside the gym and I said, Massimo, come here, put the gloves on. And I just had the mitts. And I just said, hit. Then I gave him a whack around the head. We can't do that now. But that was 4 or 5 years ago. But go, I just want to see a reaction. And he did. And he sort of shaped up. And I said, perfect, Massimo. He goes, what's that? I said, mate, you have got that in you. All right, let's show it a little bit more. Because you're a big kid, you're going to get targeted on the field. Well, here's the big fella. They're going to try and nail you. But you've got that inner mongrel. You don't just be arrogant about it, but if you've got that switch inside you, I think it's a good thing. But I think you get workers. Spencer Jeans was a worker. He'll admit he wasn't the most overly talented, but geez, he worked and he deserved everything he got. He might have played a couple of games for Reds, great stuff. But you got these kids like Jai Gray and Jojo who were just exceptional athletes. They really were.
Great work ethic.
Yeah.
And well done to Massimo, re-sign him.
Yeah, fantastic.
He's worked very, very hard. I don't think JJ probably is an exception to what I'm about to say. He was a phenomenal athlete.
Yeah.
None of those other boys would have been on the top of your your strength testing and,
No.
and those things. They've worked with
Yeah.
Jojo was an amazing runner, athlete, but those other guys worked really hard, and Jojo has worked super hard. Loved your point before, I guess, reinforcing anyone listening to this with young kids. There's one area where you should never get beaten is your fitness.
Oh, absolutely.
The one part of that you can control. A lot
Yeah.
of stuff you can't, but the fitness and I guess your definition of what being fit looks like now has probably changed. It's as much in the gym as it is out.
Yeah.
Running,
Yeah.
moving and all those things. So I guess getting to the advice part, you've lived a pretty good life, man. You've got a lot of experience. Advice for a young Jojo Fafita or Massimo Dolores entering TSS for the first time, young kid with every opportunity you could possibly imagine in our school. What's your advice to a young kid in terms of athletics?
Look, get the very best out of yourself, because you only get one shot at this, and you don't want to be that disgruntled bloke in 10, 15, 20, 25 years' time. And we all know the blokes. We've got mates who are like that. Oh, yes, I had the opportunity to go to Parramatta. I had the opportunity to go for the Bulldogs. I had a, and
All black trialists.
yeah, exactly. And I did this. Well, mate, you didn't go on with it, all right, because you didn't have the application to do it. And as I said, you get one shot, work hard, and success will come. But you've got to believe in yourself too. I remember a coach, Des saying, and he wanted to be a professional coach. He went on to do that. And we were at the under-19s national championships for rugby, and we had some high-powered coaches with us, and Desi was our technical advisor. And I said, "How you going?" He said, "Mate, after these 2 weeks," he said, "I feel as though I belong." And he said, "I can do this." And I think there is, when kids come in, they go, "Do I belong here, or can I do this?" And then they get exposed to it. And that's why they bring kids on tour, or, younger blokes, and get exposed to the Origin thing, and they learn. Because my biggest beef at the moment with kids coming in, they don't want to serve their apprenticeship anymore, because life's about instant success, instant results, and Instagram. And, in your day and my day, that if you were brought into the Reds or the Broncos, whoever, you had to serve your time. The older blokes, you had respect, and, you sat at the front of the bus, you just didn't sit at the back. But these kids now don't want to serve their apprenticeship. You've got to learn your trade and work your trade, because the older blokes will notice you. And they'll say, "Jesus, Andrew Hawkes, mate, he's a gun. Well, he's working his butt off here, and he's going to be successful, and he's going to be a good pro." So don't waste your talent, because everyone's got it. But don't be one of those disgruntled blokes at the pub in 30 years' time that I could have.
Don't let it slide, which you're right. You hear that so much. Well, I was this, I was that.
Yeah.
They won't apply that same. I guess it's the natural skill, but at some point you're going to get overtaken. If that person, if Spencer James is throwing 1,000 passes, and you've only thrown 100, he's going to overtake at some point. This is a more of a trickier one, and go with it where you want. But advice for parents of an athlete, or a boy who they think is an athlete. Advice for mums and dads out there who potentially, some do, but most don't have experience in the sport that their son's trying or excelling in. Advice for mums and dads.
Listen. Listen to the person who's looking after him. You mightn't agree with everything. Listen to your son. Listen to your daughter. Let them speak. Look, I think half the issue with junior sports, not just GPS, it's throughout Australia, is the parents. And we have these private coaches now, and they pay $120 an hour, and this sort of thing, and then they miss out on selection, the 15 A's. They always get him private tuition. One, you got too much money, and two, he's not that good. And you've got to be honest with him. You just say, look, he's a wonderful kid. He's trying his guts out, but at the moment he's just not there. But I think you just got to, they want to berate the coaches or the bloke who's looking after them, or the female coach at netball or whatever. Just listen to what the coach has got to say, take it on board, go away, don't kick cans, work a little bit harder. And if the kid's not good enough, look, I wasn't good enough to go to the Olympics, and that's just something I've got to wear. I said, I wasn't good enough. And I prefer blokes to say, I had an opportunity to go to Parramatta, but you know what, I just wasn't good enough. Just be honest. So I think the parents, some parents can be over the top with their, I think just listen, all you got to do.
Yeah. I've said the same thing to Anthony Petre. I read an article in New Zealand. It's rugby is obviously the national sport. It's the first half of rugby, the second half of rugby, and they call it the third half of rugby, and that's the drive home. And how many parents in that drive home, it's just all about, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, and your advice is just sit and listen.
Just sit and listen.
You don't want to talk, don't
No.
feel it, but also loved watching you today.
Yeah.
Really enjoys watching.
And ask them, look, let the kids play. Like, why did you play rugby when you were here? I was with my mates and I just wanted to play footy, and I think that's what kids, and I love seeing kids out on the oval here, the borders, mucking around. I know they're probably not allowed to do it. Sometimes they're playing a game of touch, but they're just playing. They're laughing. They're developing their skills. And you think when we grew up, like, off the fence and the balls are here and you'd leave your bike outside and be running around for 8 hours and it was just fantastic. You're developing your skills. Now it's so structured. Like, I don't like this. Kids like to be unstructured sometimes, and I think we've got to encourage that. But yeah, no, enjoy. That was good today. You have a good time. Yeah, let's go to McDonald's or whatever we've got to do. And the kids go, well, I didn't cop it. Mum and dad aren't into me. And all they'll criticise another, oh, how come he got picked? I mean, that's an easy one, that one, coach's son and that sort of thing. And yeah, look, I always tell the boys in the gym, be a good bloke, be a good person. And I've got a sign in the gym, I've got it on the slideshow and on the wall there. And it says, please do not walk in front of me as I may not follow. Don't walk behind me as I may not lead. Just walk beside me and be my friend. And I like it when the boys, when they leave the gym of a morning, 2 or 3 together, got your pass here, off we go. They're going to breakfast together. Fantastic. They might have pushed one sled, but who cares? They're happy, healthy, drug-free. And that's all I want.
Shared experiences. Back on your point there about, I feel like today in 2026 we've lost our imagination. Kids just playing in backyard cricket and the tramp, as Peach said, the tramp's the wicket keeper and the trees silling it off, and you're warning or you're being whatever,
taping up the ball, and do you know what I mean? Like,
sport's lost its innocence a little bit, and I fear with paying now universities in America, even professional sports starting younger and younger and younger, which is a real shame because we all sign up to sport, particularly, or any activity to have fun, whether it be acting or...
Well, that's why you do it in the first place, isn't it? And you're with your mates and you're having fun. And if I send messages now to the boys, whether it be in league or union or the cricket, all the best, play with a smile on your face. And that's one of my lines that I'll always say. And I remember before the World Cup final at the MCG 215, and there's a lot of pressure on us, to win. And you have the boys to warm up, and there's 100,000 people there, excuse me, and there's so many billions watching on TV in India. And I call the boys in, and also, what are you going to say? I said, mate, boys, the greatest day of our lives, play with a smile on your face. I'm not saying that's the reason they won, but they had a hoopla over time, and of course Starkey's fourth ball. Yeah, I never heard a roar, but George Barley, who's now the head selector, he was in the side for Pup, who did his hammy, and he was the 12th man. I think Paddy Cummins was 13th man, and it might have been, was it Xavier Darty, was 15th. Anyway, George came to me because I used to have to sit on the sideline and look after the 12th, 13th, 14th man. And George said, hey, Mendo, do you mind if I do something different for us at the sideline tonight? And I trusted George. George is an extremely intelligent human being and a good person. I said, no, Georgie boy, that's fine. So we got everything ready. George comes out with 2 eskies, and he had camembert, he had mild cheese, he had crackers, he had cups of tea, he had soft drink, he had Powerade and tea towels. And we had the best seat in the house on the side there at the MCG, and it was just fantastic to watch the boys go and do their stuff. And here we are, we're just having a cup of tea and cheese and crackers. But you're not supposed to do that on the sideline, but the game was the focus. But that was Georgie boy, one of the great men of Australian cricket, just a very smart human being and a good balance.
So you've given me a good quote. I think that's a quote before. You've talked about some good players. A teacher or a coach that you had? Last couple of questions. Teacher or a coach that had big impact on you?
Teacher? I had a couple. Bernie McCormack at St Edmunds and Maury Keenan. They were born to teach. They love teaching. Yeah, that's when I was at high school. But the headmaster at that stage, Brother Ted McGee, he was massive influence on me. He died last year, went to Bundaberg. He was also the principal of Gregory Terrace for a couple of years, Ted McGee. And I think there's a house named after him, McGee House. He taught me to drive, and he was a classic headmaster in that when we were college captain, he ran the school through the leaders, so to speak. And I'd drive to school camps with him. Like, it was full on what we were doing, but he was a massive influence on me as far as the person, Christian brothers, and just to enjoy a punt, enjoy a drink. He was pretty normal. Enjoyed a coffee. You'd ever go to the pokies? Shouldn't say that now, he's gone, but yeah, no, it was. His best mate was also like Peter Fulliger. You know Peter, and we were at the funeral together. But yeah, great man, Ted McGee. I knew him. I met him in 1978. I remember going from the interview with Mum and Dad to get into the school, and I love footy and rugby league week. And Mum said, "You better say rock collecting and stamp collecting." And Ted said he saw through it straight away. God, I was going, "Oh yeah, here we go," and I'm lying already in front of a Christian brother,
You didn't get a chance to tell him, but he had a big impact on you.
Oh yeah, absolutely, mate. He was a great man. Ted McGee. Yeah. Last year we drove up to Bundaberg and back in the one day. Probably the worst thing I ever did. And never had so much KFC and McDonald's on the way up and the way back. But coaches, look, I've seen a lot of coaches, and they all had great aspects about them, except for Jeff Miller when he sacked us all. But that's just part and parcel. I mean, Mark McBain was a workaholic, a good fella, simple worker. Slacky, he's one of my best friends, Andrew Slack. Just a good human. Has also experienced some, heartache in his life. And then Knuckles Conley, who just lived and breathed the game. Boof, outstanding. Stewie Law, loved the game. He was a coach at Queensland. Trevor Barsby, passionate about Queensland. Yeah, everyone had something. They didn't get the job for being a wood duck. But as far as probably recently be buff and how to read the game and how to be nice and have a human side to professional sport. I think we've lost that.
We slowly have. But I asked you the question around people who've had a big impact, because for boys, all the research is 0 to 6, it's all mum. 6 to 12, it's all dad. And from 12 and beyond, it's role models. So I guess the message for parents is get your kids around good role models.
Absolutely.
People who want to pick kid up, not knock them down. It sounds like you've had a lot of those good people in your life, and now they know you're one of those guys for TSS. And your name came up a lot because I guess it's perspective, it's living, it's life, and all the experiences you have. But you've chosen to come back here and give back to our boys, so we're really grateful for that. And I guess my last question for you, I could sit here all day, we could have an adult only.
Yeah, I know. We could do a different version.
But there's someone that's around this place that's impressed you that I should interview.
Can someone interview you?
No. Impressive.
Look, you know what? I've always maintained this, that everyone's got a story.
They do. Absolutely.
And I think there was a show on SBS many years ago, and a bloke would be sitting on a park bench and he just talked to random people, and then he'd find out the most amazing thing. And look, from my perspective, I know there's a lot of teachers here, a lot of staff, a lot of parents. And when I first started here, there was a camp on, and one of the parents came up and said, "Where do I sign on? Hey, Groundy, where do I sign on for the soccer camp?" And I went, "Oh, okay." Try to be polite. But yeah, look, I don't think a lot of the teachers or the kids know your background, and you don't walk around saying, "I was with the Australian cricket team and won a World Cup and won Ashes and European Cups." That's a byproduct. But yeah, look, I mean, you've done Peach. Peach is exceptional. Ty, he's a former Wallaby. Yeah, look, and there's a lot of stuff I don't know. I really don't know, and I think that everyone's got a great story, and you're sort of going, "Well, I didn't know that about you." And I think that's where it's also good for...
Definitely. And that's why I'm doing this, for
Yeah.
people to learn about other people. I do bakes and cricket, but it'd be a 5-hour podcast.
The microphone might be a bit heavy for bakes.
It's funny, I had a parent whose son didn't get engaged at all with the school. And you won't know this. You might remember who the family is now when I tell the story, but their son started going to the gym. And the parent came alive. My son's found his thing. He's been going down the gym with this strength and conditioning guy. He sent me this big, long email. He said, "I can't believe," he had a go at me, "I cannot believe that you haven't advertised this Damian Mednis guy. I've met him now and I've looked up at his background and he's done this and that and Munster and all the things I knew." And I just simply wrote back and said, "I don't go advertising it because Medno would hate that. You go down to the gym, kids go down there because you want to, not because
Yeah.
I don't want to advertise Medno because he doesn't want that.
Mm.
He just wants to go and have organic conversations with kids and get to know them. It's not about Ty doesn't want us going and telling how many tests he's played and all those things. It's just not in your nature. And I love that about you. You're humble. The boys love you. We had that catch cry of we champion good men, and you're one of those good men at our school, mate. So I know you're busy and you've got to go back to the gym, and I really appreciate you giving me some time.
I prefer to stay here for another half hour than go back to the gym
That's right.
with 100 boarders, but that's all right.
Thanks, mate.
No problems at all.